I'd like to welcome everybody to our June board meeting, the Rochester Police Accountability Board. We'll start off with introductions.
Sherry Walker Clark, I'm interim executive director, and I just want to give a shout out to Victoria, who is celebrating 1 year in the position behind me.
Rabbi Garasolo, Northwest Council seat.
Robert Keith Patterson, Alliance seat.
Arlene, is this on? Push the button.
First day with my new hands. Great evening, Arlene Brown, Vice Chair, and I have an Alliance seat.
Larry Knox, Chair, and Northeast Council seat.
William Clark, Mayor's appointee. Yvonne Wilson, I believe on the Southwest Council seat.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. Congratulations again to Victoria for 1 year. First things first will be approval of meeting minutes. They are in front of you and also were emailed out. Yes.
My understanding is the mics are for the people who are here, right? We don't need them for the streaming, is that correct?
Do we need the mics to be heard during the streaming? That's the question.
Or if people can hear, maybe we don't have to use the mics.
But they usually don't hear.
Okay, never mind. All right. Thank you. It's very loud.
Can you hear us in the back? Okay. All right, if anybody's a soft talker, use the microphone up here, but if not. All right, so we have the meeting minutes. Thank you, Dora. Meeting minutes from May 2nd in front of us. Any changes, additions, subtractions?
Since no one sees any corrections or changes that need to be made, I move that the minutes be accepted as printed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the meeting minutes are approved. All right, on to our staff report.
So we had, the PAB's budget hearing was held on May 30th. And the leadership team was there, ready for questions and presented the information. We received 2 questions from council that were followed up with, and they've already sent our responses. One question was for us to provide a list of the events that PAB attended or participated in 23-24, and we did send that. It was just, slightly more than 150. And the other question was about positions. They wanted a list of current positions that are vacant. So we did send that as well. And just to give an update on that, the current positions that are vacant are webmaster and language access coordinator. And there's interviews going to be held this month for those positions. The operations is going to be a sort of a new combined operations training specialist position. That's being devised so that there's somebody to assist in addition to the director of operations for that position. We have 2 community engagement specialist positions that are open, and we'll be planning interviews for those once we receive applications. And one is a bilingual position, which we're really excited about. And the attorney positions we had them posted for a month. Unfortunately, we didn't get any applicants, so we're starting over again, and hopefully they're planned to be posted by tomorrow. So we still have the staff attorney position and the really important director of investigations position, which has to be an attorney, is open as well. Any questions on that one?
Yes, I did have one question regarding the budgeting process. Is there a way that the board should be involved in that, at least a preliminary review of the budget before it goes to council, or?
Well, the budget was presented in February, so it was already done. The board, in terms of involvement, we talked about it in the past. I don't remember how much we did involvement. We sent it out, so.
Yes, we'll go through that.
I'm sorry?
I said, we need to really be a part of the process, so we're going to do better about making sure that happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'll take some of the.
Question.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's as much or it's, I mean, part of that, I mean, I had conversations with Sherry about the budget. I mean, I was taking input from the conversation that we've had about what we want to see in it, but we didn't really have a formalized, here is the budget proposal, here is all of us together or groups of us that have an interest in that, getting input before it's presented. I mean, I was taking that and going back and forth with Sherry, but I agree, could have done a better job of bringing everybody in on that. So that, I mean, I think that's something we'll work on better. So I want to put that all on Sherry.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I do think it would be helpful and important when we go before council, we have the support of the board as well. So
Yeah.
we'll do better next time.
I do feel what they were fighting for were things that we wanted. We asked for more than we got, which is what the initial ask was, which was a change from, how it's done it previously, but I think a more formalized process. And we'll make sure we do that for next year.
One of the things I would like to see is a training allotment for the board members to go to the various trainings so that we can become more familiarized with the process.
I think hiring the training director will help with some of that. 'Cause that's, yep.
Okay.
We actually, just to back up off that, we actually did a letter to council beginning of last year with some asks, and part of that was board training a little more, a lot more of engagement around those kind of issues. I mean, some of us have served on boards before. This board is very unique, and if you have or haven't served on a board before, and I think that really didn't get followed up on, so we can do better with that. But that was an ask of council. That as a board, we realized we wanted some of that training, and let's follow up on that again. But it was a pretty detailed ask we had last year for that.
The only question I got about the training is, and we got in for somebody to train us, is that what it is?
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends on what the need is. Right now, I think there's a training set up for the board through NACO, that they'll be doing some training in the past they had done. It depends on what it is. If we bring consultants in, whoever's going to be in the training position may have a skill that could be used to train. So it depends on what the need is.
Okay, so that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
figure out, because should they have been on the board before? Should they be part of this board before? How can you train somebody if you've never trained or been trained in that position? That's my question across the board about whoever we're gonna hire once again would be a trainer.
And it'll be somebody who also coordinates training. So they'll find the people with the expertise to do the training that the board is seeking. They won't necessarily have expertise in everything the board wants training in. They would be able to seek out people to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on, public affairs and community engagement. Now that we're developing our 2024 summer campaign, which has been going through bus ads and billboards, radio ads, and looking at the possibility of actually doing a television ad, a TV ad, and developing communications plan around the right to know draft proposal so we can increase community awareness and support for that. So that's what we're doing on the communications. And in terms of community engagement, really active in that area. This past weekend, we were in 2 places, almost at the same time with different staff members. We were out here on Parcel 5 at the Stop Gun Violence event, and in the 19th Ward, I think it's still called Square Fair.
Yes.
Okay.
I was there.
So-
I was there with my day job, and I saw
Yeah.
us there too. It's great.
So we were there too. It was really good presence there. So we also partnered with the Public Defender's Office to conduct a Know Your Rights and Next Steps training at the Father Tracy Advocacy Center. I understand that went really well. I also understand that Ben Woodward, our Deputy Director General Counsel, had his acting debut there. So we'll have to see if we can do it here for us. And then, of course, finalizing plans for the summer to get the word out. Community engagement. So when we get those other community engagement specialists, we'll be even more doing more. We're excited.
It's a lot of engagement
It's a lot of
even
engagement.
without having been fully staffed.
Mhm.
Yeah. So.
Good job. Natalie, Vanessa, Tamika, and some of the case managers who also go out and partner with the support.
Yep.
And probably some other members of the staff go out and partner and help provide information for the community as well. I don't know in the past, members from Policy and Oversight and Investigations and Responsibility.
I would just like to add too, that with enough advance notice, I'm sure many of us on the board would be happy to be participating in the events as well.
So my sentiments is that
Add us to the invite list.
So, case management, in terms of, we received 5 reports this month and we closed 14. We're real excited that we have one of the last position was open in case management, and offer has been made and accepted, and we have a new person to start on Monday, June 17th. So little by little, we're filling up our staff. And we also rolled out a process to capture survey information. We want feedback in terms of the reporting process, submissions. So staff is rolling out a process to gather that information from people who submit reports. Investigations updates. We have, we're pretty near to completing revisions to the investigations manual. So there's still a few more revisions. And so the goal is to have this in board. We had voted way in the past on the previous one, but we're planning to have this one to you soon, and hopefully a vote in July for this new robust and comprehensive investigations manual. We closed 7 cases that were sent to the police chief this month. It's a lot of big work, bravo to Ben and the team. And yesterday, we were privileged to have a legal training on search and seizure rules from Jill Capern. So it's really good. She's often really willing to help us.
Jill's former public defender and Empire Justice now, right?
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm. Very helpful. In terms of operations, we talked about the specialist position. Right now, Isabel is focusing on closing year end. Our fiscal year ends June 30th. So finishing a lot of that out. And also working with NBD, with the real estate department, other departments regarding a potential move for the PAB. And so that's something that's not confirmed, but there's some work going into that. And Larry's going to speak a little bit more about that. And we have some more work to do. I don't have as many details, I think, that I would need to answer questions. So I'm sorry, I didn't.
I said they need to leave us alone about moving because this is comfortable. So they need to stop it.
Okay.
That's going to be my chair's report when I get to it.
Okay.
I'll say.
Yeah, so that's it, I think, for the programs. And of course, our policy and oversight team will report in new business.
Any questions for Sherry?
Well, just one question, and I don't know how this works, or if it's not at all possible, that we can find out the benefits that we're getting from some of the things that we're doing, whether it's the billboards or possible TV ad or whatever, so that we can work on what's most effective.
Yeah, so what we notice when we look at our numbers, we notice when we're out there, particularly in the summer months and other months that we're out more, the reports that come in, the numbers increase as well. So we're able to measure it that way. We're also talking about ways to measure awareness, which is a little different, a little difficult. But measuring awareness, like when we went to the Father Tracy Center, we can measure that when we're working with small groups, things. We ask questions ahead of time, so pre and post kinds of things. Ask questions ahead of time, and at the end, they know that, and you know that the awareness has been increased. So, yeah, we've been working on that, talking about surveys too, to capture that information. It's needed.
As a request for our July meeting, that we have a presentation on our final budget
Okay,
for the coming year.
it'll be in the minutes. I'm saying the request.
Oh, the request, yes.
It'll be-
Yeah.
It's recorded.
Complete with graphics. Like that great presentation for the city council, only for final budget.
Anything else? Questions? All right, so that will, thank you very much, Sherry, for that report and that I know Sherry's answer to that was partially because our next meeting, there may be somebody else sitting in that chair. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Number one, I just want to thank Sherry for her 6 months that she agreed to, or 7 months she agreed to help us out, which was the initial ask, I will say publicly, or initial thought, maybe a little bit longer, not coming up on or over 18 months of time with us. So I want to give a round of applause to Sherry.
Yeah.
For all of her energy and time and beyond time that she's put in with us. We're in that process of the executive director search and finalization, which I'll talk a little bit about. And we'll do another better thank you for Sherry than just here, which she'll probably tell us not to do, but we're going to do it anyway. But I do want to help. Sherry helped us out a lot as a board and as an agency, and more importantly, as a community, to help get the agency to where it is right now from when she started January of last year. And all the work that's happened, we're able to report on now, what we'll be reporting on in the future. A lot of that is with the staff, but also with Sherry helping lead us as a community to what the people voted for, which was a police accountability board with its 5 pillars and engagement and work and policy and investigations. So thank you again, Sherry.
Yes.
Update on the search. We don't have a name to talk about publicly yet, but there is a recommendation the board made. That person is going through the process of dealing with the bureaucracy of city government to get through the part to the point of getting a final offer. They will technically, there has to be approval by city council of our recommendation, which I don't anticipate being a problem. But in the meantime, we'll figure out the process of starting them as soon as we can, and then going through that maybe council approval process. But it was I've talked about this, I think, every meeting, but we're not publicly ready to talk about the person yet. We went through a long process. We had staff involvement in the interviews, management and our core staff. The board took part. We had community members that took part in early conversations with the search firm about what they would like, along with our staff and the board. So it was a pretty intensive process to get to where we will be doing announcements, later this month about our new leadership here. Also, I'm going to announce that we have new leadership or new positions that are open in board, chair, and vice chair. Our terms are up at the end of the month, and we'll be having elections for board, chair, and vice chair next month. So the board will be talking amongst themselves about that. I do plan on running again. Ms. Brown?
Now, I plan not to run again. As I explained to everyone, at this age and stage of my life, I want to step off the front line of the battlefield with dignity and not being carried off on my shield. So I'm still going to be doing as much work, but definitely stepping back and allow someone else to step in that leadership position. We have a lot of good people on board who can definitely take us to the next level.
So we'll be. So I want to thank Arlene for her time as vice chair. So those are board discussions we'll be having amongst ourselves over the next month, and we'll be having some new faces here we'll all be here next month, but at least new staff and new leadership next week, and a new position for chair and or vice chair. I'm hoping that I'll be chair again, but you never know.
Yep.
But for vice chair, definitely, I know we have an opening for that. And going back to what Sherry had reported on the move, we've done a lot of work to get to where we are right now. And one of the most stressful things in a relationship and in life, there's like divorce, death, and moving. Those are things that are the most stressful things that people or institutions go through. We're not having a divorce. We're having new leadership come in. Sherry's still going to be around to help. We have a lot of growth that we've done in the past year and a half, but we do have a new leader coming in. And what I really don't want, and the board is all, we've talked about this, is disruption that is self-inflicted. We've learned from that, I think, as a community and as a staff and as a board. And I have real concerns about us doing a move in the midst of onboarding somebody new in leadership, in the midst of all the things that we're still working through, and it not being like a move, right next door to a fully functional office that, okay, it takes, a week to figure everything out. The options that I have understanding of that are out there right now, I don't think would be conducive to us to continue to do our work in the manner that we have been without a lot of disruption, and especially bringing somebody new in to run the organization. I'd hate to put that person in a position of not having all their staff together in one spot, at least for a few months, if not longer. I think that do a disservice to that, to our community and to the new leadership and our new staff and in the community if we're putting somebody in that position to try to do this work and then doing a move that is a piecemeal move to a different office. So we realize how nice this spot is and also how expensive this spot is. But we are budgeted for the spot. That it is an issue of the money not being there for it not being budgeted. Of course, we're willing to work with the city, have those conversations about if we need to go somewhere new. But I do want to put at the forefront that this is not, we can't be impersonal, bureaucratic about it. We have real concerns, I think, as a board and staff about a move happening that could disrupt the work that we're doing and new leadership that we're bringing in. So we'll talk with the city. We'll continue to figure out what goes on. Ultimately, the city has the final say in it. But definitely, I think as a board, and I'm assuming from my conversations with the staff and from hearing from others in the community that that would be a concern if we were introduce disruption that is not necessary this year.
I would like to make a motion that just have a vote about the sense of the board on this issue. In other words, even if it is the city council's final say, I think that it's important that I think that we're in agreement about the significance of this issue, and I'd like to have something on the record about that.
Okay, now I want to go back to,
Well, we have our motion though. Do you want to amend the motion or second it? Or,
I second it.
Okay, we'll come back to you there. I just want to, yeah. So like a motion not to do a disruptive move?
Correct.
Okay. So all in favor of a motion not to have a disruptive move this year? Something more efficient.
Have a move to disrupt the work of the organization,
Right.
and also within, I would even say, the first 6 months to a year of a new executive director. That just doesn't seem fair.
Yeah. Most important though, it would be directive to the PAB board as far as we've gotten what we're doing. If we're comfortable here, okay, right? Money, I don't believe is not really the option. Money's not the problem. So once again, I don't know, city council, whoever it is, the mayor office, I'm sure that you all want us to continue the work that we're doing. So therefore, we need to stay here with comfortability so that we can function properly.
So all in that motion of a non-disruptive move, at least through the end of the year, if not longer. All right. Thank you. It was seconded by Yvonne. Just
Okay.
yeah.
But can I go to my question now?
Yes.
Going back to the new executive director. I think I heard that it's in the hand of city council to approve that.
Yeah, the final approval goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's never been really done before, but if it happens that they don't agree with what we decided, right? Do we go back to the beginning, or do we go to the next person that we also chose?
Yeah.
So that, is this supposed to be whatever it is? But anyway, what are we gonna do about that? That's
Without saying any names, I think it was.
Right, no
I think.
names.
Yeah. No. But thank you. Technically, the board has, I think, the overwhelming say in that we're the ones overseeing the executive director. And we, according to the charter, we, oversee that, and we're under city council, but it's our job as a board to hire the person. But since we're agency of the council, since we're underneath the council, they have to eventually vote on who we decide.
ASAP, right?
Well, as soon as, there's a process they have to go through, but as soon as possible, which may be the July, board meeting or council meeting. And I have a clear understanding from talking to council and them understanding the process that they don't have an issue with. I don't think a majority of council would have a problem with our selection. If that was the case, though, I mean, that's when you have a community conversation about this is what the board feels, this is what the community feels, that we want in our leadership, and then convincing council that that is something they would want to support. I don't see that fight coming, but if that was the case in the future, I mean, that's incumbent on us as a board, and the community to fight for the person they want to lead the agency if a future city council had a different idea. But ultimately, it's their vote that decides the finality of who the leader is.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to go back to the move.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we talked about convenience for the team, but it's also convenience for the clients because we're centrally located and we're on the bus route and so everyone can get here relatively easy. And when council goes through their negotiations, they need to understand that to take us out of a centrally located place would be
Hindrance.
yeah, I mean, it'll be a hindrance to the people that come in, our clients.
I will say the other location they're thinking of, it's not too far from here and also on the bus line, but it's not as publicly accepted. I mean, like we're right on the we're a
Right.
storefront. You could just walk in here off the street. This is an area that's high traffic.
Parking and everything.
Yeah, oh, good parking. I don't know, great parking, but yeah, okay parking. But the other location just for people coming in, it's not as welcoming.
Okay.
And, if our staff are doing the work, it's definitely not in a condition right now that would be anything close to what we have right now. And money, when we say money is not an issue, I mean, we're talking about taxpayer dollars, so we always be concerned about that, but we are budgeted that, this is an extra money us staying here. This is money that we're budgeted for this time here, and if there is a point of us
Well,
moving
we're doing
somewhere.
it for the taxpayers. That's why we exist, because the taxpayers wanted a PAB board.
Okay.
And I'm just saying overall, okay, we're all the city of Rochester, so we all need to be on one accord. And I'm just saying, and stop all this, I want to say blockage or all this other stuff. I mean, just because, what I'm trying to say is, sometimes you can overthink a thing, okay? And sometimes you can try to fix something that's not broken and you get a mess. So that's the point that I'm trying to get across. We're trying to get across to the city of Rochester, because we all the city of Rochester. We need to be somewhere where we can function properly and do what the taxpayers need and voted us in, because it was a ballot vote, correct?
Yep.
So we were voted in. This is what the city of Rochester taxpayers want. So we need to be, able to give them what they voted for. That's all.
I would also add that I think I have no trouble in the future contemplating a move, but I think it should start with an understanding of what the basic requirements are on the part of the PAB. So in other words, instead of just sort of looking at random spaces, there should be criteria like public meeting space, confidential entrance, bus routes, parking, right? I would suggest that we present sort of, what the requirements are, and then the city can work with that. So.
I think there was a version of that from our previous conversations
Yes.
when they first,
That's been.
yeah, because we had that conversation last year and that was
If
input.
it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Yes, we understand that for right now, that we are in agreement that where we are is where we're going to stay. But because we are a startup, it's very important for us to write down and document steps that need to be followed by those who are coming behind us. So that's why we're talking about how to do it. Make sure that if and when the time comes, there are specific instructions for the board and city council to follow as to how this should be. When they're looking for something, it should have A through C, A through D, because these are the requirements for the work that we do. And while I have the floor, I really want to shout out to staff. They have gone through so much in this past 2 years. Turmoil, one thing after another, but they kept moving forward and the work got done, which is why we're able to go through so many cases so rapidly now, because we're finishing up the backlog. that in spite of all the things, the roadblocks and stumbling blocks, pitfalls, work still got done. And I mean quality work got done, not just haphazard or make do, because staff is fully invested in working for the community.
Well, to segue into that, another staff accomplishment, I do want to thank, this was a staff-led process, but we did get accepted into the NACO conference with the workshop that with the Albany Police Accountability Board and New York City New York City Police Accountability Board. We're all working together on doing a workshop about police and civilian oversight of law enforcement in New York State. And it's a panel that will be leading with Albany and New York City. We have staff to help put together the initial proposal, and we reached out to Albany and New York City, who agreed to come in with us, and it got accepted into the conference that is in October for NACO. So we're gonna have staff attending that, board attending that conference, and I'm really just thankful to the staff for helping put that together. And also us deepening our relationships with other accountability boards across the state, which is really important. There's a lot of work that we have overlap on, and the more information we share, the better. And but that's another accomplishment that we have.
There are a number of staff members who work on it, but I just want to recognize Ian Benz, who really
Yep.
championed that cause. So put his name up.
Yeah, Ian was the lead on a lot of that. Yes, definitely. All right, committee reports. Kind of did the search committee already, which we can probably cross off after next month. And training committee.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully we're getting close to a staffer that will be doing a lot of that work. Old business. All right, so new business. Presentation, review, and vote for our policy and oversight projects. We have our RPD discipline oversight investigation, which some really good work that we just got a few weeks ago to oversee, to read over. And police and protest, a proposal for change that's coming back before us for a vote.
Sarah sitting.
Is Daniel coming?
No.
Sarah stepped out for a second, so if you all would like to start the protest policy.
Protest policy, yep.
All right.
I figured this time I'd bring something. Okay. We've had significant conversations around protest policies. I know the majority of folks are familiar. One thing I want to start by doing is sort of giving a general overview of what our policy recommendation process is, mostly for the public. But first, a little bit of background. For folks who may not know, in February of this year, RPD put out a community engagement assessment, which it did in partnership with the National Public Safety Partnership and the Project for Safe Neighborhoods. During that, as part of making that assessment, they 26 community interviews over the last year. And one of the key findings that they identified was that RPD needed to, in their assessment, involve community more in the policy creation, development, and changes throughout the department by way of creating what they call the Chiefs Advisory Committee, which meant taking any changes to the public, to getting their input, providing feedback, and then making those recommended changes.
That sounds familiar.
That's exactly what we do here at the PAB.
That's me. I was gonna say that. Aren't that what we supposed to be doing?
In the Policy and Oversight Commission. Anytime we put out a policy recommendation, we put it out for public feedback for a period of 30 days. We take in what the community gives us, any feedback, changes, and we incorporate it to the document, and then we bring it back for you all, the board, for a final vote. You all as key stakeholders with not only assent from City Council itself, but also from the mayor and organizations like the Police Accountability Board Alliance. And that brings us here today. We are here to present the protest policy recommendations in response to RPD General Order 680.
Wait, so before you continue to say about this procedure,
Yes.
when you say they made the recommendation about the council, who's the they there?
Pardon?
You said they made a recommendation that RPD have a public,
Oh, that's that,
who's the
again,
they?
is the RPD Community Engagement Assessment.
Right, and who
which
did
was-
the assessment?
Which was done by RPD in partnership with the National Public Safety Partnership and the Project Safe Neighborhood Training and Technical Assistance.
Okay, could we get a copy of that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Something that RPD did a press conference on back in February. I'll
Yes,
send
I
that
remember that.
as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
so is RPD contemplating setting up some additional advisory group?
That is the implication of this assessment. That's what they are directed to do by this assessment. It's what the chief spoke on in the press conference. I don't know where they are in that process or if they've begun that process, but that it's.
Could somebody make it clear to them that if they were thinking of doing that, they should certainly involve the PAB in whatever is happening?
I think absolutely. I think that's sort of my intention of making sure that was
Okay.
here tonight.
And since the mayor, the chief reports to the mayor, maybe someone could communicate to the mayor that should be happening.
Absolutely.
Mr. Clark.
No, I have another suggestion. And that is, I'm concerned that I look at corporate counsel, which is supposed to represent us also,
Mhm.
seems to really be pushing this. And a lot of the information, from our previous corporate counselor seems to really be in support of this report. And it seemed like at that point in time, it was she should have known that what they're proposing is what we already do.
We already do it, that's right.
I think though, it looks like you're looking at the actual protest policy. We do mention former corporation counsel.
Yes.
Linda Kingsley.
Yes.
So that doesn't touch on the assessment, which I think was George's question. But to answer you, absolutely, we can communicate with the mayor that this process already taking place through the PAB, and maybe this is room for another bridge to be built. As they develop new processes, as opposed to just sending us the update, engage us directly on what some of those impending changes are, so that we can do the normal policy recommendation process that we have internally, which would incorporate the larger swath of city residents into the development funds.
Also, was there money spent for this?
I don't have an answer for that, but I can look into it.
Okay, I would like to know that too.
But also too, I hope that the chief of police and the mayor and all those who are suggesting this, chief, whatever the name of it is, maybe they need to read our policies. Maybe they need to do some, some background or some, homework, okay? So that they would know what we do, so they already know that it's being done, so that we can save the city, quote unquote, some money from bringing in some other people in here to do the same thing that we're already doing. So that, so we need to, once again, the city of Rochester, from the mayor on down to the city mouse, okay, need to be on board with us so that we can do what needs to be done and suggest these things. We have to have an ear to hear, okay, not just trying to overdo something or make it your own. There's too much politics to me that seems to be going on because everybody want to one up somebody. But if I'm gonna go back to what I said, if something is working or can work, it's not broken. Don't try to fix it and save the constituents and the people, the voters, some money. It's okay. It's supposed to be about togetherness, all right, and not separation or hierarchy. So that's what I have to say about that chief. What's his name?
The community engagement assessment.
Yeah, chief is. We already the community. We already engaged, so we have the right to access.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, Dijon, I had a question also. Would you characterize General Order 680 as a watered down version of what we've already proposed?
It's an interesting way of putting it. I think that perhaps.
Let's explain to the public what we're talking about.
Yeah, so before we jump into that, I would like to give just a general overview of what this is. So we've reviewed General Order 680, which is the newest general order related to covering mass gatherings or demonstrations. It's how RPD, it's their guideline for how to approach those situations. We've reviewed it, looking at the weapons and tactics used by RPD previously and what they mentioned in 680. We've looked at their processes for planning, communicating with the public, and their proportionality in terms of response to mass gathering, as well as some accountability mechanisms like the use of body-worn camera during interacting with the public during a protest, how officers identify during a protest, and what to do with third parties like medics or legal observers or journalists during protests. We've created a general list of changes that include, employing a tiered response to protests, making sure that they're matching the mood of the general crowd. We look to, outright clarify some discrepancies between 680 and some other general orders like 605, which, touch on certain weapons and tactics like tear gas, like the long-range acoustic device, pepper spray, and the use of canines. We look at ways that they can involve community before protests happen to make sure that they know who the leaders are and have some direct communication with folks. That there's a clear order of operation within the department itself, that there's a chief directly responsible for issuing orders to the rest of the officers who are responding to that mass demonstration. That's essentially what we're proposing here. Some of those things were touched on in General Order 680, so I wouldn't call it watered down. I would simply say that there are some things that perhaps they didn't engage in. I think that's, again, reflective of the value of our process. The public identified some of these things as necessary, so we're bringing forth what the public wants. Were there additional questions?
I know that this was before us before, there were some additional changes based off the community input and our input. Do you want to talk about that process, anything you highlight from that?
Yeah, so one of the biggest changes you might notice under the planning and communication and proportionality portion of this recommendation is the recommendation that they include ASL interpreters on the front lines of these protests and make sure that those interpreters are visible to the crowd so that those who may be there for our hearing can have effective communication. Another big change, one of the biggest feedback points that we got from the community was the use of the term civil disorder. We wanted to make sure that we recommended that RPD publish, number one, definition for the term, and then criteria they would use for when to deem something as such. And those are, I think, are the biggest changes from the last version of this that you see.
Any other questions?
Nope. The other one that I had a specific question about
Oh, okay.
is on the other one. But I have to say, I do find it a little shocking how inconsistent some of these materials are, and that, and that there aren't definitions for major, like, if someone can start using chemical weapons if there's civil disorder, you would think they would define civil disorder.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm glad to see that in theory, actually chemical weapons and other things which are banned on battlefields are also banned for the residents of Rochester in theory, but again, they're contradictory orders here. So I look forward to them being resolved and made consistent so that can't happen.
Yeah, and to that point, one of the things we actually recommended in our very first proposal for change, that being the data transparency project that Sarah worked on in conjunction with the rest of the division, was a version change system where it highlights anytime there are changes to policy. It shows what the change is, and perhaps even a brief explanation of why the change occurred. It's something very small that could be implemented. We recommended it as part of that project. We haven't really received much feedback on whether they would or not implement it. We've also provided examples. I know the Austin Police Department utilizes a version control system as well. Again, lifted that up as a recommendation here in this project so that some of those changes could be shown. Because I think if something like that exists, when they wrote 680 as an overarching policy, they would have noticed perhaps some of the inconsistencies with, say, General Order 605, and some of the other things that were mentioned.
Any other questions or thoughts? All right, before we vote, can the process after this is done is post it and it goes to the chief and then see
That's
what happens
correct.
after that?
That's correct. I do want to just add one thing. Thank you, Jorah, for your questions before the meeting started.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
There was a key question that I thought, should be at least mentioned here. And that was about the concurrent jurisdiction of the Monroe County Sheriff's Office, as well as New York State Troopers. One of the things we looked for as part of our research for this project was any intergovernmental agreements between both the Sheriff's Office and the State Troopers. We were told that they didn't exist, we believe that they do exist, and we're hoping that those documents create some uniformity amongst law enforcement agencies, because one of the things that we noticed with the last round of major protests that came in the summer of 2020, 2021, around that time, canines were used on the front, but canines are something RPD does not allow to be used, but they were brought in by the sheriff. So what we were hoping for was that, in those agreements, there'd be clear guidelines for what each department could and could not use, that there could be uniformity. If dogs aren't okay by RPD, they should not be okay to be used by the sheriff or the state troopers. So that's something we also recommended here. Thank you for that question.
Yeah.
No problem.
But also so what I don't understand is, are they telling us that they just have impromptu oral agreements when they work together?
Again, what was said to us was the agreements don't exist, but we don't necessarily fully know.
But how is that, there has to be some level of agreement. If RPD is monitoring a protest and calls the sheriff, they have to have a conversation about what they want the sheriff to do, right?
Agreed.
So there has to be some agreement.
True.
Right? So are they saying that every agreement is ad hoc? Or
Same question we asked.
Right.
The only thing I can
so
say
that would be good to know.
Don't the sheriff department kind of supersedes the RPD? I'm asking the question.
Yeah.
Because they're Monroe County Sheriff, right? And the police department is Rochester, the city of Rochester Police Department. And I'm asking the question because sometimes the hierarchy, because they're Monroe County, all right? And it needs to be talked about. So maybe that is why they got these,
Well, I think if they come into the city, they have to have an agreement with the county and the city about what you're gonna do if you come in. If they're just chasing somebody for a second, they could maybe in their ear end, but there's any kind of
so that's the
engagement.
answer to the question that we were asking, do they have an oral or written agreement? What can the Monroe County Sheriff do opposed to what the RPD can do? Or what's the state troopers?
Right.
All right, because generally state troopers gonna override the Monroe County sheriff, and the Monroe County sheriff's gonna override the RPD, because they got different, they got a widespread jurisdiction. So all these things are gonna come into play, so when you
That's
ask,
actually a great question, though. I'm not sure, so in other words, dogs are not allowed at,
city of
protests
Rochester,
in the city of Rochester.
but Monroe County might
And what Monroe County does allow,
Okay.
does have canines, but then the question becomes, does it overrule, so in other words, does that mean the sheriff can just use dogs if they want to use dogs? Or does it mean that they have to have the agreement of RPD? I don't know how that hierarchy or jurisdiction works. That's a great question.
I believe, I'm not sure, but that's something that we also need to ask,
Mhm.
who has the jurisdiction over who.
Right.
Okay, so that way, we would understand why the Monroe County Sheriff is coming in with the dogs, or the state trooper is coming in with the whatever, because, okay.
May I? Okay. So, as mentioned, the sheriff's department has concurrent jurisdiction, meaning alongside RPD, they have jurisdiction. It wouldn't necessarily be one over the other, but at the
Okay.
same time, they have jurisdiction. What that means is that they can use their own policies when they are in interacting within the city limits. So it wouldn't necessarily be one over the other. But simply because they have jurisdiction and they bring dogs, they would not give permission to RPD officers to bring dogs, which would be more of a higher sort of understanding of your question, if that helps.
Okay, I'm bringing this to the forefront because that's something I think that need to be, I don't know, word investigated or need to be considered. That's all.
Yeah, that's again something that we were very keen on trying to get access to was for some written documents, but unfortunately we were told that no written agreement of that nature exists.
But in reading the report, you indicated some cities do have those agreements.
Absolutely. In fact, it's actually recommended. They point out by I think it's the International Association of Police Chiefs that recommended that those sort of agreements exist, particularly in response to these sorts of occasions. So that's something that we've recommended. Hopefully in the chief's response, he'll agree with what we recommend here.
And I would further say.
So we have a step before.
Oh, I'm so
No,
sorry.
I'm fine.
Okay.
I just said but. But
Okay.
take that as you may.
So, right, so as a resident of Rochester, I certainly want the RPD to clarify the fact that the sheriff should not be using weapons or dogs or anything else that is not allowed in the, city policy. So I would ask that that happen too.
So once we vote on this, this gets posted to the board and also share with the chief. And chief has to respond to us within 30 days or could start a conversation in 30 days with his thoughts on what is recommended. And sent to the mayor and city council too. So hopefully there'd be some engagement from them because it's stuff that they both have discussed, the mayor and city council a lot. So this production informs some of their thoughts also.
After the grace period, can this report be released to the media for publicity, once we get the responses back?
I think it's put up right away anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
It's up right now. The media has had access to the draft. We upload this to the website. They'll have access to that. But I think your question was about after the responses.
Yes.
So after that 30 days, we can absolutely do another presser if the Public Affairs and Communication Division so agrees.
I think it'd be really good too to have some just kind of graphic summary of the, the main recommendations.
Okay.
Thank you. With charts. With charts.
I'm all for visuals.
All right. A motion to approve proposal for change for policing protests.
I so move that we approve.
Second.
All in favor?
And thank you so much for a really good.
Thank you all.
All right. Thank you.
Yes. So next you'll hear from Sarah, one of the oversight managers. I'm gonna take a step away.
Because that's going to be really bright, so we got to go inside. Oh. She's doing her presentation. Yeah. No, you're good. You won't be in the line of sight. I mean,
Oh, okay.
Okay.
so
My back will beat it.
Oh, okay. It's you.
How do people feel about the lights?
Turn
Come
it
on
down.
down, okay. Thank you, Victoria.
My camera. Oh, that's much good. And also, is it streaming okay that way? Maybe
She's got the streaming totally handled.
The darker the
That's
thing, the more the people be able to see it anyway, streaming.
That wasn't a criticism, Sarah.
Hey, everyone. I'm Sarah Jenks, Oversight Manager in the Division of Policy and Oversight. I'm here to present some highlights of the report you'll vote on later tonight. called RPD Discipline and Oversight Investigation. In the interest of time, please save any questions for the end of the presentation. First, let's start by recalling November 2023, when the New York State Court of Appeals ruled that portions of Article 18 of the city charter relating to PAB's discipline power are invalid, but the rest of the law remains valid. The Court of Appeals stated that police discipline must be negotiated between the City of Rochester and the Locust Club unless statewide legislation is passed to ban discipline from collective bargaining. Such bills have been presented in both houses of the New York State Legislature since 2020, but they have not made it out of committee. But anyway, that pathway does already exist. Thus, when you all conclude to sustain allegations of misconduct, our discipline recommendations are beholden to the RPD's own system of discipline. For that reason, this oversight investigation analyzed the patterns, practices, policies, and procedures related to discipline within the RPD's own discipline system. The discipline process is handled by the RPD's Professional Standards Section, or PSS, which is their Internal Affairs Unit. The RPD's PSS is responsible for receiving, processing, and investigating complaints made against Rochester police officers of police action or misconduct. For this analysis, we reviewed various policies, including the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Rochester and the Rochester Police Locust Club, which is the labor union representing the officers of the RPD. I'll call that agreement the CBA. The current CBA covers the years 2019 to 24. It took years to negotiate, and negotiations didn't actually conclude until 2023. In November 2023, the RPD shared this finalized CBA with the PAB. Ostensibly, negotiations are already underway for the next CBA. This report aims to empower the public with knowledge about the effect of the CBA on the discipline process. We also reviewed internal RPD policies, like the Professional Standards Section or PSS manual. We found that RPD's PSS manual has not been updated since 2014, and General Order 305 on command discipline has not been updated to reflect the current list of violations eligible for command discipline. Additionally, General Order 320 on the Civilian Review Board was rescinded in February of this year, been replaced with the General Order PAB. We also analyzed data from PSS annual reports and the Rochester Police Discipline Database, which was created in response to the 2020 repeal of the PA. We verified that analysis with supplemental information from the Democrat Chronicles Discipline Database and information we requested directly from RPD. The RPD issues discipline in a few ways. The first is the formal discipline procedure, which is probably the popular conception of police discipline. All formal discipline proceedings come from a complaint. The complaint either comes from a citizen complaint or an internal complaint. The RPD's PSS carries out an investigation, which might include gathering evidence and witness statements, and then the officer has an opportunity to be heard. A formal discipline investigation would conclude with a finding that might be exonerated, sustained, unsubstantiated, policy review, or office. If sustained, the chief of police decides whether or not to file departmental charges. And the other common form of discipline at the RPD is called command discipline. It's a less severe alternative to the formal discipline procedure. There are specific criteria for command discipline that I'll discuss later on. A major difference between these two forms of discipline is that under command discipline, if the officer has no other discipline imposed for 1 year, the record is destroyed and will not be considered in any future discipline proceeding. Over the next few slides, I'll use the phrase sustained finding a lot. This means that an RPD PSS investigation concluded that an officer's conduct did occur and it amounted to misconduct or misjudgment. Now we're moving into the pattern section. This chart shows us the number of formal discipline investigations that PSS has reported over the past 10 years. It's split up by citizen complaints in blue and departmental investigations or internal complaints in orange. The number of investigations from citizen complaints decreased from 2014 through 2017, but it's remained pretty consistent since then. This large decrease in 2022 could be related to the fact that the PAB opened for complaints in 2022. It's possible that reporters did not know if they could file a complaint with both PAB and PSS. And then orange shows that the number of investigations from internal complaints has fluctuated since 2014 with no discernible pattern. This chart shows the investigations from citizen complaints. The blue line on top represents the same numbers from the previous chart of citizen complaints, and the orange line shows the number of sustained findings. So we see that sustained findings for citizen complaints fluctuated until this peak of 15 in 2018. Since then, sustained findings for citizen complaints have decreased year after year to a low of 2 sustained findings in 2022 and 2023. If the findings of discipline investigations were random, we would expect to see the number of sustained findings fluctuate over time or maybe remain consistent. This persistent decline in sustained findings since 2018 suggests that there may be some external factor influencing decision-making. I'll discuss that more on the next slide. Now we're looking at investigations of internal complaints. The blue line is the total number of investigations, and the orange line shows the number of sustained findings for internal complaints. Similarly, sustained findings for internal complaints fluctuated until reaching a peak of 39 in 2019. Since then, sustained findings for internal complaints have decreased year after year to a record low of 0 sustained findings in 2023. We cannot determine the cause of this persistent decrease in sustained findings. We can think about 2 major decisions in 2019 and 2020. First, the establishment of the Police Accountability Board in 2019, and second, New York State's repeal of 50A in 2020. The repeal of 50A made it possible for police discipline records to be made public for freedom of information requests. It will be important to monitor patterns related to police discipline across the state to evaluate whether the repeal of 50A had an impact on decision-making related to discipline. That would be across law enforcement agencies, including the RTD. This chart shows the penalties imposed for all sustained findings over the past 10 years. The 3 most common penalties are letter of reprimand, memorandum, and suspension. RPD policies are very clear that a memorandum is not a form of discipline. That means that over the past 10 years, the chief of police has decided not to issue discipline for nearly 30% of sustained allegations of misconduct. These are the 2 primary data sources for this analysis. On the left is the PSS annual reports, and on the right is the City of Rochester's public discipline database. This landing page for the discipline database says that it was made available in response to the repeal of 50A. It contains records only for current RPD officers where the investigation concluded a sustained finding. The webpage states that additional records will be added to the database at the conclusion of each case. Remember that. A comparison of the 2 sources revealed that there are cases missing from both the annual reports and the public database. Additionally, there have been reporting inconsistencies around command discipline over the past few years. Some cases are missing altogether, while others are missing penalties or list penalties that are inappropriate given the parameters of command discipline. And importantly to note that without PAB's direct access, we cannot know what other irregularities there are. It's possible to know just from the public. Now I'll speak specifically about command discipline. The command discipline procedure must commence within 90 days of the incident of misconduct. So the collective bargaining agreement says that if the incident is discovered after that 90-day period, formal discipline proceedings must be carried out. And only certain penalties can be imposed: a letter of reprimand, suspension of up to 3 days, a fine, driver improvement school, or a transfer. Again, the memorandum is not one of the possible penalties for command discipline. Lastly, only certain violations of the rules and regulations are eligible for command discipline. The collective bargaining agreement, or CBA, classifies each violation of the rules and regulations. These classes range in severity from class 1 to 3. In the current CBA, all class 1 violations and 3 class 2 violations are deemed eligible for command discipline. However, earlier CBAs described command discipline as a procedure reserved for minor violations, and then that word minor was removed from the current CBA. And until 2019, there were only a handful of class 1 violations and the same 3 class 2 violations that were eligible. So the most recent CBA more than doubled the list of violations that are eligible for command discipline. A major difference between command discipline and the formal discipline procedure is this routine purging of records. If an officer faces no other discipline for 1 year, any record of the command discipline filed is destroyed and it's not considered in any future discipline proceeding. The CBA's own discipline guidelines are based on the concept of progressive discipline. Progressive discipline means that each subsequent incident of misconduct can be evaluated for a more severe penalty. However, discipline cannot be truly progressive when prior violations are excluded from future investigations of misconduct. Under the practice of command discipline, if another violation happens, they'd have to restart the clock on the progressive discipline process. It's difficult to assess the practice of command discipline due to the routine purging of records, but the RPD's PSS annual reports do give some details about each incident. For this oversight investigation, we reviewed the 4 instances of command discipline included in the RPD's 2023 PSS annual report. Just a note for the board, each of these cases is described in more detail in the report that you have. So I know you'll probably have questions about it that are in there. So here are the 4 or 5 cases from the 2023 PSS annual report. First, 0458 was missing from the annual reports. So we aren't sure if it should have been included in the 2023 annual report or 2022. PAB requested information when the case was discovered on May 16, 2024, but the record had already been destroyed. It may have been uploaded to the public database and removed before this investigation began, but we don't know. Case 230036 was uploaded to the public database and it was promptly removed after 1 year. It met all the eligibility criteria for violation and the penalty. However, the commanding officer's description of the incident seemed to suggest a different violation of the rules and regulations than the one that they alleged. Case 230248 was uploaded to the public database. It combined 2 incidents, one of which met all the eligibility criteria. The other incident did not, and I'll discuss that further in a moment. Cases 230708 and 0783 are missing from the public database. Recall that the database says that they will upload a case upon its conclusion, but we seem to be missing these. The RPD actually stated that they would share case 0708 with the PAB upon its conclusion. So it's unclear why the case was included in the annual report when it hadn't even PAB obtained case 0783 through an information request from the RPD. It did meet the eligibility criteria. However, the commanding officer's description of this incident also seems to suggest a different violation of the rules and regulations than the one alleged. And that is missing from this database. Now I'm going to go in depth into the case review of 0248. And I also want to draw your attention, I believe it's page 20, if you want to see some of this stuff in writing. I want to be clear that this review of individual personnel records does not constitute a PAB investigation into allegations of officer misconduct. Rather, it's an assessment of the practice of command discipline. Again, this case combined two records. The first record met all the eligibility criteria for command discipline. In this incident, an officer was instructed to, quote, sit on the prisoner guard for a hospital patient with an outstanding warrant. Over the course of the officer's duty, the officer could not locate the patient who had left hospital grounds. The command discipline form was filed 15 days after the incident. The form alleged the officer violated GO 520, prisoner transporting and processing, which the PAB understands to fall under Regulations 1.1, obedience to laws, ordinance, and rules, which is a Class 1 violation. The officer received a penalty of a transfer. The violation and penalty of this incident meet the eligibility criteria. Also included in the command discipline package is an order of protection from the chief of police, dated 2 days. The order of protection instructs the officer to remain from assaulting, striking, stalking, harassing, menacing, intimidating, threatening, etc., name redacted. The order of protection does not issue an allegation of misconduct. Rather, it says you are advised that further similar conduct on your part may result in disciplinary action. In October 2023, the Chief of Police issued an intradepartmental correspondence describing an incident that occurred in March 2023, where the officer was seen on video fraternizing with a patron at a bar in full uniform. The chief wrote, quote, the purpose of this intradepartmental correspondence is to close both command discipline packages under PSS 2023-0248. The completed command discipline package outlines the prisoner escape, and this intradepartmental correspondence documents the first incident and ensures that both incidents are properly closed. The June 2023 order of protection does not mention that it is related to the March 2023 bar incident, but its inclusion in the discipline package leads one to that conclusion. There is no evidence of command discipline proceedings for the first incident until October 2023. If the proceeding did not commence by June 15th of 2023, command discipline would not have been appropriate. The Chief of Police appears to have made an exception to the 90-day parameter, extending it to 200 days. The PAB inquired about discretion in extending the time period for command discipline, but the chief declined to respond. He requested to review a rough draft of this completed oversight investigation, after which he would decide whether a formal interview would be necessary. The chief's order of protection mentions but does not allege violations of rules and regulations 4.1 conduct and 1.6 insubordination, which are both Class 3 violations. If these are the true allegations for the March 2023 incident, command discipline would not be appropriate. The October intradepartmental correspondence alleges a violation of rules and regulations 4.29 fraternization, which is missing from the CBA classification list. It's unclear why the chief required the officer to review rules and regulations 4.1 and 1.6 and omitted rules and regulations 4.29 in its June 2023 order. Lastly, we analyzed the RPD's practice of sharing information about discipline with the PAB. Article 18 of the city charter requires that the PAB and the RPD share specific information about complaints of misconduct. The law states that the PAB shall have access to all documents and evidence, including but not limited to RPD personnel files, IA Pro database, all other RPD databases, and PAB investigative files. The PAB must also notify the RPD upon accepting a complaint, and the RPD must notify the PAB upon accepting the complaint. Additionally, the RPD's PSS must provide the PAB its entire investigative case file related to a complaint when an investigation is completed. But it is the position of the RPD and the city law department that this portion of the city charter was dependent upon the PAB's exclusive power to discipline. The PAB disagrees with that position. Nonetheless, it is the position of the RPD and the City Law Department that PSS findings and recommendations should not be shared with the PAB. So the PAB and the RPD share information through a secure file transfer system, or SFT, which includes Microsoft SharePoint, and Genetech Clearance, which is a digital evidence management system. An analysis of the SFT revealed that the RPD only notifies the PAB of investigations that come from citizen complaints, despite the fact that the RPD's PSS manual states that investigations may originate from a variety of sources, including internal complaints submitted through the chain of command. On average, we found that the RPD notifies the PAB 3 days after receiving their complaints. And as of May 21st, 2024, the RPD had notified the PAB of 30 investigations from citizen complaints. During the 2023 calendar year, the RPD transmitted 17 notice of investigation letters to the PAB. Each of the letters indicated that the complaint originated as a citizen complaint. The 2023 PSS annual report showed that RPD had initiated 14 investigations from citizen complaints. So it's unclear if the RPD may have a different definition of citizen complaint, as the number of notification letters did not match the number of citizen complaints initiated. That's all of the highlights that I've prepared for you from the report. There is a lot more information in there, and you're welcome to questions now, discuss, or follow up with email, call, or text later.
Number one, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. How long was that presentation? I mean, it's
22 minutes.
22 minutes, probably like 2,000 hours worth of work.
Fantastic.
You know, no frustration and work together. Yeah, I encourage, our meetings can kind of be, maybe not interesting all the time. I think they are. If you're watching this, or, just have people watch this part of our meeting, if nothing else, to get the detail of the work that our work product, and to see the questions that we're asking that are unanswered and the ones that are answered, and that's part of our existence. Is to kind of engage with this and work with the community, work with RPD, work with the city to improve and answer these valid questions. A lot of my questions I think I would have would be after, hopefully, the chief responds to some of the open questions in there. So I'm really looking forward to what the council, the mayor, and especially the chief have in response to some of the open questions. So I probably got 20 based off that, so maybe not clear, but I just have 3 quick things I do want to ask. I definitely plan on improving this and then, this work product. For the sustained complaints for the year 2014, that 314 number seemed like an outlier compared to like the numbers before, the numbers afterwards. I mean, I know we have to pick a year to start, but do we have to know what 2013 was?
Sure.
Or it just started off at 314 and then it was never there again?
No, I'll get it for you.
Yeah.
But why don't you ask another question?
Yes.
Yep.
And while you're looking that up, the last slide we had, I do have a real concern about the information sharing. The charter we have a lot of clarity in the charter that gives the board and the staff, often dealing with the city or corporation council, I should say. There isn't always that same clarity. I think city council has grown to agree with most of our clarity along with the community. But the fact that, the charter is pretty explicit that there is no exception in there for complaints as opposed to internal complaints. That process of making the charter, that would have been put in there if that was the exception. It says all means all. I don't know. Does it mean something? Is it, the idea is pretty clear. So the fact that, delineation is a real concern. We have other obvious issues that I think we're trying to work through. We'll have a meeting about that again later in the month. The staff has with the city and RPD and Corporation Council, but that's a real concern, us not having, access to those investigations. Also the fact that, the sharing of information with us, the charter is just really clear. I mean, I wasn't there when that charter was made. I was advocating for it. There are some things in the charter that aren't effective anymore, and that one was one thing, which is disciplinary power, but the decision by the court said everything else in the charter is valid. The only thing that was taken out was discipline power, not other things connected to investigating, not other things connected. And considering how long the decision took to be made, and how detailed the decision was, if they wanted other parts of the charter not to be applicable, the court decision would have said that. I think that, again, seems kind of obvious. So that information sharing, page 22 of the report, I encourage people to look at that again. That's where a lot of my concerns are. I guess I'd wait to see what the city and the RPD responds to why those things aren't being shared with us. But I think that is a real concern for accountability. I'd like to believe that in good faith, RPD is working, and maybe there's some other explanation for some of this not sharing of information. But if a complaint is internal to RPD, that should be something that we should know about. That's not that even maybe in some instances might have even more weight than a citizen complaint because somebody that knows law enforcement as a part of it, and they have an understanding of something that maybe wasn't proper, and that should not be something that's hidden from the community. If somebody is willing to step up with a complaint, that should be something that we should have an understanding about just as much as somebody else who's a citizen of our community that has a complaint. So again, good work. I think some of the main questions are unanswered.
I'm gonna answer
This question,
first
and I got a
question. Yeah,
question.
okay. So, as Larry mentioned, I had to choose a start date for the timeline of this analysis. I chose 2014 so that we could represent the past 10 years of PFS annual report data. We did receive information requests. Oh, I don't. You can turn it off. Okay, thank you, Sharon. Okay, so PSS or the RPD did send us annual reports back to the beginning of the millennium, and so I do have that information. And generally, in the years before, from 2002 to 2013, there were a lot more investigations, combined citizen complaints and departmental investigations. So in the year immediately before, in 2013, there were 382, which leads me to another point. There is a lot of data that I collected that I could not include in analysis of this report. So everyone here would have read, and the public will eventually see that I included a data release in the report, which says that there are many potential analyses that were excluded from the present oversight investigation. The PAB will provide access to the raw data used for this report on rockpab.org. The PAB will invite the public to review and analyze that data, and then you can contact us for questions or collaborations.
Okay, my question was basically, somewhere there you said after the police officer has been investigated, 90 days after that, the record is going to be swiped clean.
So for command discipline proceedings in particular, the 90-day period refers to how long they have to start the investigation. So when the alleged incident of misconduct occurs, a commanding officer then has 90 days to start command discipline. And then the purging remark comes after that officer has gone 1 year without any more discipline. And then, yes, the record is completely destroyed, and not only are the records destroyed, but the record of the incident having occurred does not exist and will not be included in further discipline proceedings.
Okay, I got a problem with that. I'm just saying, because if an officer do something, he got a year, so he could be on his best P's and Q's to make sure that he don't do that exact same thing again, but at the other times he's still doing other stuff. So is that something that we have, I want to say, input on for that to change?
So that is,
I mean, it's like, criminals, you go to court. I'm just saying, I'm sorry. The criminals go to court, the judge gives them 6 months or a year. Most smart criminals right? They're not gonna do that same thing within that time frame. It might be one day or 1 second afterwards, they can go back and do it again, because they know their record is quite clean. So I'm not saying the RPD is criminal, but what I'm trying to say, though, the same process goes on. So I believe that should be changed. It should be at least, still on the record. They should not be, how can I put it? Because two years later, they might do the same thing. So they have no record to go back and say to correct them. So that's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, great point. So all of this discipline, all of it is included in the Locust Club collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and so that is the only avenue of influencing is whoever's at the negotiation tables for the CBA. And so that's why I was really careful to point out that this practice that you're talking about right now, command discipline, really expanded under the most recent current contract. They more than doubled the list of violations that were eligible for it. And they even expanded the concept where it used to be reserved for minor violations, and then they removed that word minor.
Okay.
I also just want to note that it's important to remember our own role in police discipline. While we may not have formal ability to directly impose discipline, each of the cases you all close contain recommendations. And you'll notice that our disciplinary matrix includes the concept of progressive discipline as well. But unlike command discipline, we do not purge the record of what has happened. We keep a full record of every case that we've closed, and that will be included if further infractions happen. So our recommendations will reflect the concept that we're sort of highlighting here that seems to be missing from RPD's use of command discipline.
And I did have a question regarding the collective bargaining agreement that was entered into in 2019, where the word minor was eliminated.
Well, this year, 2024.
No, it was
Yeah,
in 2019 when it was, yes. And basically my question is, who negotiated? It seems like we're losing more and more power. The city would be losing more and more power as a result of this. So as far as,
Let me answer this. So,
could I ask a question? I haven't asked a question
oh,
yet.
why they ask you to negotiate?
Oh, okay. And again, it's because when I look at this, it appears that more power is shifted to the chief, and his span of authority has expanded extensively. But then, if the locust club is negotiating, it almost feels like they're negotiating not that there's collusion.
Larry, you said you were going to respond.
I'll take this off. Wearing my union hat, I would say that, well, happens for me, the locust club in the city, as you see, the contract should have been, it took a lot longer from when it expired to when it was settled. Eventually what happened went to an arbitrator, and they kind of made the final decision, the city and the locust club and loggerheads over, and coming to an agreement. I would say that expanding expanding the kind of disciplines that management can give that are not kept in a record, as a worker or as an officer, I would see that as a victory. Is that
A victory for who?
for the worker or the officer? Because that would mean that I have, it's harder to get discipline that sticks in my record because of the expansion of things that can be managed, that can be general, what's the term, the management discipline that's directly from the chief, that's separate from command discipline. Yeah, that's a command discipline. So I think from their negotiating aspect, this is something we don't have any impact on. The city, negotiates directly, but that is an outcome of this. That I think to the community, that may not be in the community interest. I think we have an opinion on, but I think that is the outcome with the expansion of things that could disappear for your record after a year. That would be a win for workers or officers that don't want, to have progressive discipline sitting on them all.
Man, just
I was going to say, I'm
Add to
switching
this.
unions.
Yeah. I'm just saying that's the impact. I agree with it. That was.
Yeah. I just want to add to this. One, to your question of who negotiates, I can't tell you in Rochester who specifically negotiates because I haven't looked into that specific answer. I can just say that in other cities across the state, Buffalo and Syracuse specifically, typically it's the office of the corporation counsel that engages in that negotiation through the office of the mayor, of course, as their representative, legal representative. Um, and no matter where they are in city government, whoever the negotiator is beholden to someone else that has been elected. So, as Larry says, we may not have direct influence over that, but we certainly have the ability to speak to our partners in government to figure out the answer to that question and to have some input on the 2024 or current negotiations around the CBA. So,
I will
that's
say
something-
What does city council have to vote on?
Well, they vote on what's approved, but.
Wait, they approve the CBA?
But because it went to arbitrator, the arbitrator imposes a contract and they don't have a choice either take that or not. The way the
Right,
law is
but they
written.
could not.
But they do have.
But then,
So-
but then I think this is probably a council discussion, but then it's still imposed, like the council can't say, because arbitrator,
Right.
which was picked, says this is the contract, but there was no agreement. Council kind of just has to take it, they can vote against it, but I think in reality, it's still imposed because that's what arbitrator,
So there are a couple things about it. So
which is
one,
another state issue.
right. So one is we have once again this conflict of interest where the person who mainly represents the police department is now supposed to be negotiating on behalf of the welfare of the residents of the city across the table from the police department.
How much-
Okay?
It's not HR, it might be HR, I don't know if it's HR.
Could be.
Well, so I think it'd be very important to know, and I think the citizens or the residents of the city have a right to know who's doing it. I think we really need some transparency in this process, and because I can't imagine that anybody would think that more than doubling the number of things that cannot be kept on a permanent record is in the interest of the residents of the city. And that we really need to sort of figure out a process where the residents, particularly the residents who overwhelmingly support police accountability, right, are represented in this process of negotiation with Locust Club. The other thing is that what does it mean to negotiate a procedure which goes against your departmental policy? If you say the departmental policy of progressive discipline, then by definition, you should not be allowed to have a policy that contradicts that.
And
To have a
expand.
procedure that contradicts that policy. So I think that that's an interesting question. How does that happen? I also think that we have to look, my understanding of who arbitrates is that, again, to be honest, Corporation Counsel colludes with the Locust Club and they're happy to have an arbitrator who has a record of deciding on behalf of the police, right? So I think we have to also look at sort of how that whole process works. And, right, again, transparency is part of what we want to be doing here. And transparency about how all of this happens. One other thing, I had another.
Oh, can.
All right, you want to finish that, please, but then I
Robert
just,
had his hand up too.
well, I
Yeah.
have two, and I still have the,
And
But
also,
we're
want
gonna
to
stay on the same
respond.
subject.
Yeah, but I think it was
oh, on the topic, okay, then I have
It's
another.
on the topic because the question I have is which is better, because I see it says serves as a less severe alternative to formal departmental charges of misconduct, which is telling me that one, you're trying to cut down on time, and two, expense at the result of having equity in disciplining police officers. Am I reading that correctly?
Can you rephrase that a different way?
Probably not at 6. But what I'm trying to say is you've had formal departmental charges or discipline first. And then this thing came on as a way to supposedly streamline
So
their discipline, the police department's discipline process.
I don't know the timing of these things. They could have,
Because what I see is you're choosing one over the other. So when does formal departmental charges become activated?
that's a great
And that's what I'm
question.
trying to say is
Yeah.
one seems to have been replaced, but it hasn't been removed from their discipline process.
Right,
And so
so,
I see this as kind of hedging bets, again, with that expansion of what is eligible and what is not being ethical.
I hear you now. So, yes, I'm going to make a question out of that maybe wasn't in there.
It's hard.
So I sought to understand kind of the decision tree of when do commanding officers, when does PSS, and when does the chief go each of these avenues. I asked for questions about those decision-making processes, and the chief declined to respond because I am interested. Is it the de facto process to go with command discipline if it's eligible? I think yes. But then we kind of see that, is it maybe now the process where they're just trying to expand command discipline? We don't know.
Well, and see what I'm seeing is that the issue of the being at the discretion of the commander.
There are so.
Because again, I could make everything go one way and forget that there's another alternative.
So I do want to remind us all that there are some concessions that an officer must make to go through the command discipline process. So they must plead guilty to a charge of command or an allegation of command discipline. And so when they do that, they forfeit their ability to file a grievance with their union, and they forfeit their ability to go through the Article 75 of the Civil Service Law and go through the appeals that way. They also are accepting that they will not be able to have a memorandum as the outcome. So as you saw in the chart about penalties, there is a high chance that someone will go through formal departmental charges and come out with just a memorandum. So command discipline isn't all pros. There still are decisions to be made.
But they're still getting away with what they did a year later. They can go back and do the same thing. So, like I said, I'm pro-union. I've been union all my life. Okay, but it comes to a point where, once again, and I'm just going. I could be done did something extremely bad. All right, and I plead guilty. So now, I'm gonna go back after a year later, because it's in me to do that, right? And I got away with it. So now I'm gonna do the same thing again, right? There's no background to be used that this officer or whoever it is has a problem with such and such because it's white clean. I understand about the union, the local stuff, and all that kind of stuff, right? But I'm saying, and we're saying that the city of Rochester, the mayor, whoever, negotiates this stuff, right? So to me, it's given, I want to say RPD, right, a blank slate to do whatever the heck they want to do. And we're not trying to condemn them. We want to, help better them so that they will function properly. That's the thing that I saw after 90 days. I mean, I was in a union, UAW. I got rolled off or whatever it is. It might have lasted for 60 days, but it stayed in my record. Follow what I'm saying? So the issue is it's not staying in their record. It's being white clean. That's the issue. So, and there's nothing that we can do about it because it's union, correct?
Well, there's nothing we can publish this. There's nothing we can do about it until we change the disciplinary law on a statewide level.
Okay.
Thanks for bringing
Okay.
it back to that.
Yes. So, but the other thing I do want to say too, I find that this outcome, and I haven't had a chance to review the whole collective bargaining agreement yet, but particularly egregious given that 2019 was the year the PAB was established. So in other words, the years that this is being negotiated, you can track with a period of time in which the residents of Rochester made it really clear the kind of police accountability they wanted.
Right.
So, yeah, do you want to say something about that? I have two other comments just about this, but
Really
if we're
I only have a
still
question on this one.
yeah.
Oh, it's just a really quick add-on, is that during the same time that negotiations took place for the 2019 through 2024 amendments, the option was always there to write in the PAB's own charter into the collective bargaining agreement, but that route was not chosen.
And that comes from the establishment that existed in 2019 up to 20.
Well, what was about suing us too?
Yeah.
Huh?
Well, because what was about suing us? They didn't want that.
No, is that on this topic?
Well, first of all, I wanted to thank you, Sarah, and your department, because this was so eye-opening. And things need to be changed, but we start with letting the public know exactly how these egregious things are happening. The more we talk about it, the more it's publicized, the more the community will be behind. There has to be some change, and accountability has to come from us. The rooster can't rule the hen. The way it's done now, discipline is not permitted, and we need to highlight the fact that there are some very egregious things that are being done. That in order for us to change policing in Rochester for safety for everybody, it starts with this. And thank you all so very much. This was really eye-opening and very good.
Amen. I just have two other observations that I saw. So one is page 11. This is also an example, as in with the policy, where there's a lack of clarity about no absence in definition of terms, contradictory terms being used. So, for instance, PSS says that there are sort of 5 different ways that they can look at policy, but then their statistics give a different category and don't include one of the other categories or whatever, and then they don't define all of them. So that need for consistency is also highlighted there. And the other thing that, again, that I find problematic and is an example of the unwillingness of just a very basic communicate with the PAB is the PAB wrote to the department with very specific questions.
What page?
I'm on page 17. They asked the RPD liaison, Captain Swetman, very specific questions, and got an answer, which then they were told by Captain Swetman they could not publish, even though it's an email to the email, which is foilable. So, to me, that just shows a kind of desire to block everything or to be uncooperative in a way which is very problematic in terms of the work that we need to be doing to help the residents of the city.
Okay. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Any topics or?
Oh, yes. Yes, great presentation. Thank you so much for stepping up.
This will be on the website.
We need a motion.
Oh, wait, I got more pontificating to do. One last thing, when you talk about the data that's being up on there, if anybody's a data nerd or somebody just like that, getting that kind of access to data with a clear outcome of where it's coming from, it's kind of unique in government. Sometimes that's like in a website that's in a database that you have no idea exists, but it's public. It's going to be on our, it's like you said, it's going to be on our Police Accountability Board websites page, and please go in there and find some more stuff and reach out to our Department of Policy. They may help you, or you may come give us some more ideas of other things to look at in those data sets. Thank you for initiating that. No problem.
Okay.
Right. Make a motion to approve this.
I make a motion to approve this.
I second.
All right.
All in
Arlene
favor?
and Reverend Patterson seconded. All in favor of approving this oversight investigation?
Everybody.
So, we are done with new business. Thank you very much, everybody. We are going to have a very quick executive session. I know it's late, maybe not 5 minutes, but we are not doing any votes in this executive session for anybody watching. But we're going to have a quick executive session about potential legal actions that we may be taking based off the email I sent out earlier today. Just a quick discussion about that, because a lot more discussed the rest of the year. Motion for executive session?
I don't know.
All right. All right, we are recessed for executive session. Wait, all in favor? Okay.
Oh, boy.
All right, we are back from executive session. Thank you for staying with us if you're watching. We took no votes and no actions were taken. All in favor of closing the meeting? We are done. Thank you for watching. The minutes and other information will be up on the website later this week.